Welcome to Happy Horror Time. My name is Tim Murdock. I am here today with the very talented writer Jeffrey Reddick. He wrote Tamara, Final Destination, and Day of the Dead. Hello, Jeffrey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. So let's start off with Final Destination. What is your hand in the history of this movie?
My hand's all up in it, pretty much. No, I worked at New Line Cinema, which is the studio that produced the film, and I came up with I originally wrote the idea as a TV spec script to get an agent for X-Files, but then one of my friends said, "Oh, this would make a great feature," so I wrote a treatment, which is like a 12-page story version of it, and went out to some producers who had a deal with New Line, and we worked on it for about 6 months, and then New Line bought it. I wrote the first draft of the script, and
nice.
That's...
Now, with slashers, you can see them and, guys walking around houses. What made you come up with something that you can't see? So, when you leave the theater, okay, well, clearly there's no Michael Myers or Jason,
right?
But, death could be around the corner.
Right. Well, I wanted to do something different, first of all, and actually that was the hardest part of selling the project. I mean, I worked at New Line. The producers had a first deal at New Line, and New Line kept coming back and saying, "Oh, you can't have death as a killer. You can't see it, and nobody can fight it. That doesn't make any sense." They couldn't get their head around it. So that was a really hard sell. And actually, in the first draft of my script, at the very end of it, in the last scene, they actually made me have this kind of almost frighteners kind of,
right,
entity kind of show up for a moment. But up until then, we'd kept it you don't see anything. And luckily, when James Wong and Glenn Morgan from the X-Files came on, they insisted we're not going to show anything, and so it worked out well.
Since that movie started back in 2000, now you can take a step back. And what legacy do you think Final Destination has on the horror genre in general?
I think, and I say this because I'm a lifelong horror. I'm the biggest horror geek. I've been watching these movies since I was 12.
I love that about you.
So yeah, and so my mom should, don't blame my mom. I snuck off and did most of those. So I just, as a lifelong fan of the genre, I feel I'm very proud. I could die tomorrow and be happy that at least, an idea that I came up with did kind of spawn, because it was the first film of its kind that was kind of like a slasher film without the slasher, with death as, the main villain. And, it did kind of start kind of a more supernatural craze, I think, whereas we'd been having a lot of slasher films up until then. And so, I think the legacy is just, it just showed that you don't have to have somebody hacking up teenagers, right, to make a scary movie. And you can kind of elevate it. I mean, I'm not going to get too highfalutin. It is pretty much a slasher film without a slasher. But you could ask some bigger questions about fate and destiny and things like that. So I just think that it'll kind of be remembered. It'll be remembered as that movie with death as a killer.
So you being a writer, you write what you know. Okay, so Tamara is about a girl who gets picked on, and then she comes back as a seductive, sexy person who, seeks revenge on her friends.
Yeah, and that was me. I was
where did that come from?
Well, you know what? I was a pretty ugly girl in high school, and I wanted to be a seductress. And no, no, I always wanted to tell because I kind of grew up with Loretta Lynn's story, a coal miner's daughter story. We grew up really poor in Eastern Kentucky, and me, my sister, and two of my friends were the only non-white people in pretty much the whole... It took us 45 minutes to drive to school, and we had a town of 2,000 and spread out. So there was a lot of racism growing up. And so I definitely kind of the picked on bullying thing is something that I related to. And the funny thing is, knowing a lot of horror fans, I think that they all have that in their background in some kind of way, whether they're gay or whether they're, poor, or they don't like sports or whatever, they feel kind of out of place. I think that's kind of when you talk to a lot of horror fans and a lot of horror writer directors, they have that same kind of story. So Carrie's also one of my favorite movies. I just hate that you have to wait till the end of it for her to kill everybody. I'm like, let's start killing those jerks earlier. Right. So it was kind of my inspiration was to kind of do a homage to Carrie, but have it, again, where she kind of turns each of these kids sins against them or something, right, that they feel guilty about.
Which I love, by the way. Those are awesome. The way you turned everyone, it was great.
Thank you. And it should have been the only. It's so funny because I love all of them. The only one that I don't like how it turned out is the two jocks, because in the script, in the movie, it's obvious that they date rape girls, And so in the script, Tamara made one of the guys rape the other guy. Nobody said anything about that scene, you know, throughout any of the rewrites up until shooting. And then like the day before, the director called me and said, well, how much do you want to show? And I said, well, it's a rape scene. It's not a sex scene. So I don't want it. It's not porn. You know, it should be violent and it's rape. And then when I saw the finished product, it's ridiculous. It's like they start kissing and then they fall out of frame, and then the girlfriend's supposed to walk in on them and pull the sheets back and see her boyfriend raping this guy, and she pulls the sheets back and they're kissing under the sheets fully clothed. So I'm like, that completely, now everybody's like, oh, she made them gay to like punish them. I'm like, that's completely the opposite.
Oh, that's good.
You know, well, it's not, yeah, but it's a bad a bad read on what I did. But I mean, I love the movie because that's what I wanted to do, was to turn it around. But it's funny that that's the, you know, they kind of have this flash of a girl being like tied to a bed and raped a little bit, but you know, I guess having the rapers rape each other is not acceptable.
So shifting gears a little bit, on the set of Day of the Dead, who was the biggest diva? Mina Savari, Annalyn McCord of 90210, or Nick Cannon?
No, that's a funny question. You know what? I have to say it. I'm not just blowing smoke, because my joke is I grew up in a trailer, so I tell everything, and I don't gossip, but I will tell the truth.
Do, and you're in a safe
well,
place.
No, but nobody. It's just us.
Okay, are you ready for the top 5 questions? Oh, there's a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Kill
well,
you.
if it's about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, spoiler.
Okay. What year did Funhouse come out?
I think it was. I think it was 84.
Lower.
83.
Lower.
Oh, crap. What was it? Well,
Same year as Friday 13 Part 2.
80. Well, that was 80.
One. Okay. It's okay.
Drats. Yes, I'm the biggest horror fan in the world. I know nothing.
Who is Tamara star Jana Dewan married to?
Really? I think his name is Magic Mike.
We'll take that.
No, Channing Tatum.
I know, yeah. I can't say it either.
No, I know. And Jana Dewan's like a wonderful, sweet woman. She's amazing. So just
that's good. I
love
like
her.
That.
Love her. I mean, actually, nobody on set has been well, I can't say that. 99% of the people that have been on the sets of my films have been wonderful, which is great. So, and she's one of them. She was just like the sweetest, most approachable.
Oh, I love hearing that.
Yeah, she's so great. So nice.
Okay. Day of the Dead director Steve Miner directed which Friday the 13th sequels?
2 and 3.
Oh, wow. Good job. Okay. What is the name of Heather Langenkamp's documentary?
I want to say my name is Nancy.
Well, yeah, I am Nancy.
I am Nancy.
But we'll take it.
I am Nancy.
All right. Here's the very last question. Who directed George A. Romero's 1990 version of Night of the Living Dead?
Tom Savini.
Perfect. Awesome. And one last question. What advice would you give to any writers of the horror genre?
I usually give them like 3 pieces of advice. 1, write. Keep writing. 2, try to get your stuff made yourself if you can, because it's really, everybody's always trying to say they want to get a studio film made now. And if you look at the films coming out of the studios, they're either $100 million films, or remakes or sequels. And now the big thing is they need to be based on a book or a video game. So the studio route is just not the way to go. You can shoot a film. I went to a horror film festival in New Orleans this past weekend, and this guy had shot a feature for $100,000 on the Red, and it looked amazing. Like you can get your stuff made. It's like, I think it's trying to get your films made, but just be persistent and be open to constructive criticism. You know, find constructive criticism. Like find people there, because a lot of people will, just want to tear your work apart. But I have writer friends who ask for your opinion, and then you give it to them, and they really don't want it. They just want you to say it's great. And if you ever think that you're a great writer and you can't grow, then you're screwed.
Oh, that's good advice. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Thank you for watching Happy Horror Time.